Well, the story that I have to tell you tonight stars a person who was a woodcutter. Woodcutters tend to show up in a lot of stories, don't they? Raise your hand if you're a woodcutter. Raise your hand if you'd like to be a woodcutter. Raise your hand if you want to just know a woodcutter who will do things for you. Yes. Well, so this was a young man, and he was a woodcutter. He lived all alone in the midst of a forest in a small cottage. That was okay with him because he was afraid of nothing and no one. But he was very poor. And one day the woodcutter grew weary of his poverty. So he went to visit his godfather, an old wizard who lived in a nearby marsh. The wizard was reading his book when the woodcutter came in. "Oh, my godson, good to see you," said the wizard. "And so you've grown tired of your poverty, have you?" "Yes, I have, but how did you know that?" "Well, it's here in the book. Take a look and you will see." The woodcutter looked in the book, and there on the page it said, "But the woodcutter grew weary of his poverty. He went to visit his godfather, an old wizard who lived in a nearby marsh." The wizard was looking at a book when the woodcutter came in.
Well, there you
"That's
go.
amazing," he said. "Oh, yes, everything is in the book. Everything. Past, present, what we're saying right now, it's in the book. But because you are my godson, do you wish to become rich? If you do, turn over one page and see what it says there." Well, the young man did wish to become rich, and in his enthusiasm, he acted too quickly, and he turned over 3 pages. And there on that page it said, "In the very best guest room lived the old wizard, who could do exactly as he pleased. He did not read his book anymore, for his eyes had grown weary, and in any case he had always known that he would be happy, and so he closed the book and was happy." "Well, that's very well for me to know," said the woodcutter, "but you've turned over too many pages. Turn back and see what it says for you." So he turned back 2 pages, and on that page he read, "The woodcutter forgot all about going to bed. He climbed the tree quickly, and looking down he saw that it was hollow." Could I turn one more page?" she said. "No, you can't," said the wizard, "for then you would know too much, and it is not good for a man to know too much.
Oh.
But because I am your godfather, I will tell you that the tree you are looking for is a beech tree. And you will know it because it has a sign on the bark. And now you must be on your way. And when you are rich, do not forget about your old godfather." "Oh, I won't," said the woodcutter, "and thank you." And he set off through the woods looking for the tree. He walked all night, where he was afraid of nothing and no one. He counted 100 beech trees. He rested for a while, and the next morning he got up early, and that day he counted 1,000 beech trees, but not one of them had anything carved on its trunk. On the 3rd day, just as the sun was about to set, the woodcutter was very tired, and he was thinking about going to bed. But then he saw on top of a hill a lone beech tree, and he said to himself, "I'll just check that one, and then I'll go to bed." Well, it was a good thing he checked that one, because that was the one that he had been looking for. It was standing there majestically, and on its trunk it had carved the numeral 6. "Ha! This is all working out," he said. And so the woodcutter climbed the tree quickly, and he looked inside, for, of course, the tree was hollow. Well, he let himself down inside the hollow tree, and he found himself at the beginning of a long passageway. Well, he walked on boldly throughout the night, for he was afraid of nothing and no one. But finally, as the day was beginning to dawn, he saw something fluttering ahead of him in the air. It was a butterfly, and he thought, well, where there's a butterfly, there must be light. And soon, sure enough, he saw some light coming down and a long stone staircase going up to the ground. And so he was excited. He took that staircase in 3 bounds, and he found himself in a large courtyard. The floor of the courtyard was marble, and walls of a castle rose up on all sides. Along one of the walls there were 15 mounds of dirt with names spelled out in pebbles on top of the mounds. And in the middle of the courtyard, there was a tree, a beech tree. And in the shade of the tree was a chair. And sitting in the chair was a king. "Well," said the king, "have you come to try?" "I have indeed," said the woodcutter. "What must I do?" "Well, you must answer 3 riddles, and if you get them correctly, then you can marry my daughter." This is always the reward in these stories, isn't it? He said, "Well, excellent then. Let's begin at once." "But are you not afraid?" said the king, "for I must tell you that if you fail to give the correct answer to these riddles, well, you will join the 15 before you who have failed, whose bodies lie there along the wall." "I'm not afraid," said the woodcutter. "I am afraid of nothing and no one." "Very well," said the king. And so he motioned to a trumpeter who came out and blew a fanfare, and into the courtyard there came the king's daughter. She really was a very lovely girl. She smiled at the woodcutter, he smiled back at her. Oh, yes, my riddle. First turn it over and then start to add, but they were not clever and lost all they had. Well, the woodcutter, he smiled. He was thinking about the beech tree, and he said, "Oh, the answer must be 6. And then if you turn it over, that's 9, and you add the 2 together, that's 15, and those are the 15 people who were not so clever, whose bodies lie against the wall." Well, the king's daughter turned bright red, and that's how he knew that he had answered correctly. "A lucky guess," said the king, "but let us see how you do with the next one, for the next one is my work." He was clearly very proud of his work because he looked around to make sure that everyone was paying attention, and then he cleared his throat, and he began. "If I called it a bird, I'd be telling a lie. It cannot sing songs, and yet it can fly. It is not a spider, and yet it has spun, and the cloak I am wearing of its thread was one, and the riddle I sing is the work of the king." He was not a very good singer, but he was clearly really proud of what he had done. And so everybody applauded and cheered, and then they looked at the woodcutter. The woodcutter smiled because he was thinking, He was thinking about that butterfly, in the passageway. And he said, well, if it's not a bird, but it can fly, then it might very well be an insect of some sort. If it's not a spider, and yet it can spin, then it's probably a butterfly or a moth, and the silken cloak you're wearing was made of its thread, the thread from its cocoon. Well, the king turned deathly pale, and that's how he knew he'd gotten the right answer. "Well," said the king, "and now for the third question, because you must answer 3. He said, "Oh, no. I have already answered 3. "You haven't. You've only answered 2. "No," said the woodcutter, "I have answered 3. For do you not remember that when we started, you asked me if I was afraid? And I said I was not, and that is true, for I am afraid of nothing and no one. So I have answered 3 questions. Now do I get to marry your daughter?" The king grumbled, but what could he do? And as for the king's daughter, she gave a little yelp of surprise, and she ran over and threw her arms around the neck of the woodcutter and gave him a big kiss. And so the 2 of them were married. And after a few years, they had that whole castle to themselves, for they were the king and queen. And in the very best guest room, there lived the old wizard who could do exactly as he pleased. But he did not read his book anymore, for his eyes had grown weary, and in any case he had always known that he would be happy. And so he closed the book and was happy. Yay.